Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Dr. Ben Vincent, and I'm a member of PyMC Labs, the Bayesian consultancy. We're very excited to be making this announcement of PyMC-Marketing today. It's the open source Bayesian marketing analytics package. In this webinar, we will tell you a little bit about the package, give you a high-level overview, how it came about, why it might be particularly useful for you. And we're also going to hear from two industry experts to get their views. We're going to take some questions at the end, but right now I'm going to kick off with a bit of an intro into the background and genesis of the PyMC-Marketing package. So I'll just share the appropriate window. Which has gone missing. Okay. So PyMC-Marketing is built on a foundation of PyMC. So what on earth is PyMC? Essentially, it's one of the most popular Bayesian modeling packages in Python. So it's a fairly substantial project that's been going on for a number of years now. It is sponsored by NumFocus, and at this point, we're nearly up to 400 separate contributors. So PyMC Labs, on the other hand, is a Bayesian consultancy. And over the past couple of years, we've been helping companies solve really hard and high value data science problems. We consist of a team of PhDs, mathematicians, computer scientists, and industry experts. Over the years, we've been working with a wide range of different clients across a number of different industries, but we have actually had a good cluster of clients who all work in the marketing analytics space. So based on that experience of the kinds of questions that companies have in that space, we recently decided to distill all of our knowledge into a package that would be hopefully kind of push the envelope and increase the accessibility for many people. And that is PyMC-Marketing. So as we're going to explore in the webinar, this is a marketing analytics package, which is open source and Bayesian. And we're going to explain why these are good things shortly. PyMC-Marketing has two main pillars that focuses on different flavors of questions. So the first one is media mix models. And the key thing that media mix models allows you to do are to ask questions, answer questions like, how effective are your different media channels in driving a KPI? And that could be anything that you are particularly interested in, like customer signups or revenue, for example. So there's a whole host of questions that surround this, like how should I spend my budget across channels in the next quarter, for example? And how do I not get confused by seasonal factors? These are all types of questions that are addressed by media mix models. The other pillar revolves around customer value to your business. So customer lifetime value modeling allows you to ask questions such as, how valuable are each of your customers, your entire customer base? And you can get at issues like, how can I best retain and acquire new customers? How much money an investment should you put in to retaining and acquiring new ones? So these are two traditionally kind of separate marketing analytics techniques, which both of which feature in PyMC-Marketing. Now, who might use PyMC-Marketing? So this is a bit of a simplification, but on the one hand, one category of people could be business to consumer companies who wish to enhance their marketing efforts. So you might be a relatively early stage or growing company looking to get started on your kind of marketing analytics journey, or you might already have started that but wish to really maximize that. So you might also already have some quite good marketing analytics provided to you by external companies, for example, but you might be motivated to get your data science team to in-house those efforts. And there are various reasons why you might want to do that. And so PyMC-Marketing is a free to use open access repository. And so you can go and explore that and build all kinds of fun and insightful tools. The second broad category of company that might be interested in using PyMC-Marketing is more business to business. So, for example, you could be a marketing analytics service provider giving marketing advice to many different companies, for example. So your data science team could pick up PyMC-Marketing and start building tools which your in-house analysts then use in order to provide advice to your clients. And your data science team could basically build some architecture around this in order to customize it for your purposes. So build data pipelines and report generation, for example. Either way, you could optionally engage with PyMC Labs. So the reason why you might want to do that is if you are particularly interested in rapid development of media mix models or customer lifetime value models, or you might be after particular bespoke customization for particularly tricky niche situations, for example, or you might be in a rush to get access to state-of-the-art functionality, which we have already applied for some really major companies. One of the reasons why we think PyMC-Marketing is a strong contender in the world of marketing analytics is that it represents the overlap of efforts between PyMC Labs, who bring decades of experience in Bayesian statistics and model building to real-world problems. And then on the other hand, we have domain experts who have both contributed to the code base and just given kind of expert guidance. And so the conjunction of the two allows PyMC-Marketing to really focus on answering core business questions that are useful to people. So we'll take a short detour now, and we'll hear a bit about media mix modeling from Niall Oulton.
Cheers, Ben. Yeah, so just to introduce myself, so I'm Niall. I've worked in econometrics and marketing analytics as a whole for over 10 years, and obviously marketing mix models are a key component of that. And I'm not going to go over the benefits because I think Ben's kind of gone through kind of the function of them, but I think what's quite really interesting and exciting for myself in the industry is kind of seeing how things are moving. So marketing mix models aren't new. They've got quite a long history. So they originate from the 1960s, and for a very long time they were largely unchanged. They're basic linear regression, and essentially, there's quite good reason for that. The market was quite simple. There was only a handful of channels to measure from. There's no online marketplace, so fundamentally, a simple approach to measurement of effectiveness was kind of all you needed. But I think what's quite exciting is, there's a really big movement, especially in recent years, towards Bayesian marketing mix models. And I think the success of that has largely been through, widespread adoption of open source systems like PyMC. So, one of the first examples I came across, and I think a lot of people on this call will have done, is the HelloFresh example. And I think this is one of the first quite comprehensive examples of how to use Bayesian marketing mix models in actual production client side. And kind of what I've seen kind of move in the industry is, or kind of why people are moving towards this, is going, well, the number of channels I'm measuring has gone from 3 or 4 to 5 to 15 to 20, and fundamentally a lot of people in the industry are using Bayesian methods to help measure the different variety of channels, particularly if there's sort of low levels of spend in some. But I think what is particularly interesting and is really going to be quite exciting, especially with the use of PyMC-Marketing, is a concept that I came across in a paper in Google from 2019. And essentially the paper is talking about future challenges in measuring effectiveness. And one key component it talks about is uncertainty in measurement, and sort of aligning stakeholders with what actually is uncertainty. And I guess what is uncertainty is essentially going, well, whenever we measure media or measure anything or do anything, there's going to be a level of uncertainty in that. And naturally, when we measure something, we want to minimize that level of uncertainty. But essentially, through understanding that, we can fully leverage the risk. So what that basically means for marketers is going, well, if I'm quite a low risk marketer, with the information from a Bayesian marketing mix model, which you can quite simply get from PyMC-Marketing, you can fully understand that risk and plan accordingly. Conversely, if you've got a stretch target, you can again look at the uncertainty and go, actually, I want to be quite risky in my approach. And I think what's exciting is Bayesian marketing mix models as a whole obviously facilitate this, but PyMC-Marketing as an open source package is, it's a relatively easy to use API, and gives the full benefits of uncertainty. So I've not got a huge history of Python coding, but it's quite accessible for anyone to access. And I think the other thing that's going to be really exciting for the next probably couple of years in the industry as well, we're only just seeing the starts of the benefits of Bayesian marketing mix models. So, we extend these to hierarchical models. It can be extended to time varying parameters and so forth. So I think what's going to be exciting is, we're just at the very early days of how things are going to move forward, especially in an open source project. So I think that's going to be really exciting for how things go. Cool. Cheers, Ben.
Okay, thanks, Niall. So that's really great input on media mix models. Next, we're going to hear a little bit about customer lifetime value modeling from Colt.
All right, thank you, Ben. Yeah, my name is Colt. I have over 7 years experience in data science and machine learning engineering. A year ago, I started working on my own CLV library before joining the PyMC-Marketing project. And CLV is all about modeling customer retention and their overall value to the business. And this is increasingly important because more and more companies are adapting subscription and loyalty programs into their business models. And it's easier to retain existing customers than it is to attract new ones more often than not. And the ability to identify your highest value customers, as well as those most likely to churn, is paramount for optimizing marketing strategies. Now, subscriptions are an example of a contractual modeling scenario, but PyMC-Marketing can be used to model non-contractual transactions as well. An example of this would be modeling customers who make repeat transactions at an online store. Now, predicting customer churn in a non-contractual scenario like this has some additional challenges, but PyMC-Marketing provides several models specifically for this use case. And they aren't black boxes. As Niall mentioned, a Bayesian approach enables uncertainty to be quantified. And even with limited data, these models can be reliable. And core CLV functionality is currently provided in PyMC-Marketing, and many new features are coming soon. So keep checking back for updates.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks very much. So we've talked a little bit about open source, but let me just go into that in a little bit more detail. Now, open source is really a strength from lots of different directions. The core thing about open source code is that the code is there open so that people, but also AIs like ChatGPT can view that. So one of the very interesting things that will to observe will be to see how open source packages like PyMC, but also PyMC-Marketing will be able to be used and harnessed by these large language models. So for all we know, in 6 to 12 months' time, it might be possible for a data scientist on your team to just use general language to basically create a very capable marketing analytics solution kind of in a pretty short space of time. So we're maybe doing ourselves out of a job there. One of the other things that it's quite good at is it avoids vendor lock-in. So the code is out there and available, and it's not going to stop working if you stop paying under a subscription model, for example. It's also highly flexible. So the way how open source software is often written is highly modular. And so if you want to tackle different questions or use different types of approaches, then you can basically pick from a selection of tools that are already there. But additionally, there's no reason why you can't customize and write your own. And that can be contributed into the repository for other people to use. Equally, it could be something you keep within your company. It's also very useful, I think, for talent acquisition and onboarding. If you compare a kind of a bespoke, self-made code base to one which is open source, then you can imagine how it might be much easier to find people with existing experience, obviously in Python, but hopefully PyMC and possibly even PyMC-Marketing as well. There's also a great deal of community support that tends to evolve around packages. And so that already exists for the core PyMC, for example, and we imagine that that will grow and evolve as the use of PyMC-Marketing expands. It's also really great in terms of innovation. So the fact that it's open, people can kind of see what you're doing, and people are often motivated in order to contribute their own novel things. And this generally kind of fosters a sense of innovation. So very often open source tools might be on the cutting edge. There might be cutting edge stuff done in a non-open source manner, but you don't know that. Why Bayesian? So this is a really great question. Now we're not going to talk about this in this particular seminar, maybe a bit in the Q&A perhaps, but there are many foundational statistical benefits you get from the Bayesian approach. That's just something that I'm going to leave dangling there. But a few things that I did want to highlight is that the kind of models that you get are open box, which means that you can look inside them, they're understandable and explainable and interpretable. That contrasts to a traditional kind of black box machine learning or neural network type of approach, which may well do a great job capturing a data set, for example, but maybe doesn't score quite highly when it comes to understanding exactly why it's saying what it is saying. And when you're spending potentially multi-million-pound advertising budgets, you do want a sense of understanding of why that is the case. The Bayesian approach also allows you to capture your uncertainties. So when this isn't anything new with PyMC marketing, Bayesian approaches have been around for some time. But in terms of the marketing analytics space, it's particularly useful when you're making these high risk business and spending decisions. You really want to be informed by kind of quantified degrees of risk. So some of the core take-home points that I wanted to clarify are that PyMC marketing will grow over time as an analytics package. We think that its open source nature is a real strength, and PyMC Labs is essentially building an ecosystem of packages. Today we've heard about PyMC marketing, but a month or two ago, we also released Causal Py, and that is another part of the toolkit that helps you make causal claims in the absence of randomized A/B tests, for example. In terms of plans for the future, right now, April 2023 represents the main release of PyMC marketing. So we're currently at version 0.1, and we have core MMM and CLV features. We'd like to invite contributors to come in and add to the package. So if you're a data scientist, or if you have a particular marketing analytics expertise, then feel very free to do that through the GitHub repository. Regardless, the goal will be to integrate more and more features over time. And so the aspiration is to be to close in on the state of the art at any given time. So for those of you who want to build your own data analytics platform, you can feel free to go and check out PyMC Marketing. If you want something built much more rapidly with quicker access to these state-of-the-art features, then feel free to get in touch with us at PyMC Labs. And before we open up to questions, I'd just like to thank all of the people. This is a list of the folk who have contributed to the repository. There have been a few more who've lended their advice and experience. So if you're interested, you can check us out at PyMC Marketing and PyMC Labs. And I think on that note, we'll switch over to questions.
Great. Thank you, Ben. I'll be reading some questions and then we can just go popcorn style, whoever wants to answer. First one is Bayesian MMM has been in the market for almost a decade now through R and other libraries, including PyMC. So what is new here? Well, I guess I'll start. One is I'm not aware of a library that does Bayesian MMM in PyMC. I mean, there's blog posts that do that, but there is Lightweight MMM and Robin. These are the ones I'm aware of. And one is it's the first library built on PyMC, which is a very solid foundation, and that will now enable us to add a lot more features. Some of them that we have already explored and developed in-house that, we can add now that PyMC, which is very scalable and has gotten much more scalable in the recent years, to add things like hierarchies in terms of like nationality, but also across channels, and things like time varying coefficients. So if you read our blog on PyMC Labs, then you've probably seen those posts about these different more advanced MMM features that we plan to include here.
I think just to add to that, I think what's exciting about the PyMC Labs repository is I don't know what which ones the questions are leading to, but I guess you compare it to Google Lightweight or Meta, you're essentially looking at two experimental side projects of companies who sell media, right? So this is quite a cool project in that it's from not one of the main big, San Francisco sort of tech companies. It's quite exciting, right? So I think to come from an open source background is quite cool, and I think that's what's quite exciting about this project in comparison to potentially other side projects like Meta and Google Lightweight.
Yeah, just to very briefly add to that, we are also completely independent from marketing channels as well. So that is one thing that's worth bearing in mind, particularly if you're interested in MMMs. We don't have an advertising channel for you to advertise through. So yeah.
Michael asks, recently a few packages for MMM have come out, including Meta's Robin and Google's Lightweight MMM. Can you share any thoughts on differences versus PyMC-Marketing, pros and cons in approaches? So, well, I guess I'll start. So one of the biggest differences to Meta's Robin is that ours is a fully Bayesian approach. So that means that we rely on sampling, and that is often a more robust estimation method than optimization, which requires iterative optimization. There's actually quite a bit of complexity in Robin to get reasonable fits, and because you can have collinearity and many different things that fit. So that's one benefit. Compared to Google's Lightweight MMM, both of them, as of this day, have the same model implementation based on the Google Bayesian MMM paper from 2016. Now, as I said, we plan on improving the model and then adding to it, so that will happen soon. As of right now, it is very similar in terms of this. We have different parameterization in terms of the some of the transfer functions, but that's more of a detail. Also, there is an optimization currently in Lightweight MMM that we don't yet have in PyMC-Marketing, but that is also something that's coming. Happy to add. Well, and I guess another difference is that we are open source first, I would say. So this, like through PyMC, we have a lot of experience with community centered open source development, and that is often more difficult in companies where the things like code review and their own internal Git clone is in play, which makes taking on outside contributions often much more difficult. So we, I think, are going to be able to much quicker integrate things that come from the outside, because with PyMC, we've already basically have done a community-led open source project.
One of the other questions we had was, is there a plan to have PyMC-Marketing in Conda? And I can tell you the answer to that question is yes. Exactly when, I'm not 100% sure about, but if you're keen on knowing the answer to that, then feel free to go and follow the repo.
Another question for Ben. Does PyMC have a concept code for causality?
Yeah, so I very, very briefly mentioned a package that we released about a month or two ago called Causal Py. So that at the moment is very much focused on being able to make causal claims in the absence of full randomization that you might have in classic A/B tests. So the focus is very much on what are called quasi experiments, where you are not directly in charge of who goes into what group. So, for example, it is not always possible to completely randomize who sees what version of an advert. And so you don't have a randomized control trial that you can do in order to make causal claims in that case. So at the moment, we have Causal Pi as a separate package. One of the things that I think is quite kind of exciting about the ecosystem is that over time, there are going to be various linkages and connections. So for example, at the moment, we've essentially bundled in MMM and CLV. Right now, they're somewhat separate, but in the future, we're going to see how both of these things can combine and interact. So I would expect that it would be quite a natural thing to see, to address the issue of causality, to answer what if type of questions that merges into PyMC-Marketing.
Is there a roadmap for the features you're aiming to develop? Currently, we don't have anything public. There's the GitHub issue tracker. That's, I guess, what comes closest to it. And we invite you to put any feature requests there or bugs you find, also pull requests, of course. Related to that, another question further down in terms of, like, I guess, timeline. I saw one public roadmap. So we don't have one, but actually I think that's a reasonable request. I think we want to put something up, and also a question about the timeline for hierarchical models and time varying coefficients. Hard to say. I mean, we have these actually in an internal version that still needs to be incorporated into the code base. And I mean, we've done this a couple of times now. So it's not something that we have to first research and everything. We just have to port over the code. So yeah, it's something that's coming, and is not something that will be like in the very far future, but I'm also not going to say it's going to be in a week or a month, but something in between those two.
There was another question here. Do you plan to develop a course on the PyMC-Marketing package? So we basically are in internal discussions about that. So I believe the answer will probably be yes. It won't be appearing in the next month, for example. So I'll refer back to Thomas's answer about the roadmap there. Sometimes we kind of make this roadmap clear in the issue tracker. Other times you might just get a surprise and an announcement will be made. But that certainly is something that we have talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I would make it a bit more concrete. I do think that we will have, as part of our corporate workshops, which I just posted the link in the channel. So there we teach Bayesian modeling using PyMC with very applied examples, and we teach simple linear regressions and hierarchical modeling. There's now a new course that we're adding to this, that Ben is adding to this, on causal inference, and we also will add one on MMM. So if there's like definitely interest and someone is like, oh yeah, we want this Bayesian course and this be an extra module that we want to take, we would make it happen for that, but we will make it happen regardless. So yeah, if you're interested, definitely send us an email. That's something that we want to do.
So another question is asks about plans to estimate yearly seasonality only from a selected period. So I don't know if that is currently a plan, but I'm due to review a pull request on seasonality. And so that is exactly the kind of thing that we can build in. So if you feel like you would actually like that, feel very free to submit a GitHub issue. That will more than likely be addressed, I would say.
Can the package be installed on Windows? Definitely. So the main dependency is PyMC, and there are installation instructions specifically for Windows, and we have many Windows users. So the quick answer is you just use Mamba, which is a conda clone, to install PyMC, and then it should just be pip install PyMC-Marketing until we have conda forge packages for that as well. But yes, you can. There shouldn't be any problem.
So another question I've seen, can we customize the saturation functions in the package? Yeah, absolutely. So the clients that we've worked with, for example, all have their favored different saturation functions. So there's absolutely nothing to stop you from writing your own and sharing it with everybody else through a pull request. But like I say, there's nothing to stop you also from developing your own private layer of code that you just keep internally on top of PyMC-Marketing. So yeah, you can go and check the docs about how we've organized the structure of the functions and the classes. And yeah, like I say, we're more than open to requests and questions. So probably the best route to do that through is issues at the moment.
Neil asks, I'm going to pass this question to Niall. One of the nice things about the Bayesian approach is you get error bars on everything for free. But have your clients been able to digest the extra info? Have there been new communication challenges? So Niall has been dealing with this problem for a long time, so I'm going to let him answer.
Yeah, no, it was actually, to say, yeah, it was quite a new thing for me to bring that to clients. But generally, with comfortable onboarding at the start of the project, to sort of go through exactly what the approach is at a high level, and fundamentally the concept of probabilities kind of resonated quite well with clients that I found. So ensuring there was that onboarding process, it actually made them quite excited about the concept of what the results could do for them. So it was definitely a new communication challenge, and that's one of the things the Google paper, which I mentioned, does highlight, is it is going to be a challenge. But again, I think we're at a stage now where actually it's quite exciting for clients in learning that they can get quite cool information from it. So yeah, I think I've always found it to resonate quite well, and never really had any issues.
So one of the other questions was asks about GPU optimization for faster sampling. So I might refer that to Thomas, but I will kind of highlight that this is where you start to get kind of economies of scale and kind of interactions. So PyMC-Marketing is built on top of PyMC, and very recently PyMC made it exceptionally easy to change out the sampling backend for its default versus JAX, and there's another one called NumPy, for example. And so one of the really nice benefits you get is that as the research and development on MCMC sampling improves and becomes available in PyMC, that will then semi-automatically be available to you through PyMC-Marketing. But I don't know if Thomas had more specific information about GPUs.
No, yeah, I think you said it well. JAX GPU sampling definitely can scale models, and we've seen that many times, especially if we have large data sets. Mostly for MMMs, we haven't really used them just because they weren't necessary. But if you do have that large of a data set, then it's easy enough to try whether it actually makes a big difference for you. There was another question here about my biggest problem with lightweight MMM and other MMM libraries is how troublesome it is to define different prior distributions for each channel. This is a big plus on PyMC. Does PyMC-Marketing currently support the definition of prior distributions? So for custom lifetime value models, you can specify priors when you instantiate the class. For the MMM, currently you cannot, but I have it on good authority that Juan, who developed a lot of the MMM code, he plans to add that. So that should be in the next version. And even before that, it should be fairly straightforward. Just inherit from that class and then just add your own custom priors as you need. But yeah, that's definitely something that we think is important and functionality that we want to add, but doesn't exist today for MMM. I think there's another question that I wanted to pass to Niall. Does PyMC-Marketing, I mean, to the extent that you think it's, I guess, a question more if it's possible, not whether we add it, but does PyMC-Marketing plan on incorporating advanced features or modeling capabilities like top-level channels, exposure from pinned ads affecting lower-level channels like search ads?
Yeah, I think this is, I think me and Ben mentioned this on the call actually, it's quite a, Ben actually did a Jupyter notebook on this, which was separate to marketing. And it's more talking about the concept of mediation. So I guess nested models and filtering through. So, you know, directly within the core package, it doesn't, it's very much a direct model. But in terms of extending it to a nested approach, you know, the PyMC Labs team, I mean, Ben, you can look at Ben's research document on it. I can post it after, but goes very much into sort of those mediation approaches of, you know, filtering through effects through paid search and so on. So it isn't in the core model, but it's definitely possible and has been done in PyMC extensively by the team.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, so I envisage a flowering of a number of different types of MMM class, which each do kind of progressively more custom things. So yeah, adding in more kind of structural knowledge about the upper funnel, not done at the moment, but there's no reason why we couldn't build that in. So I'd just like to reiterate the invitation to submit issues. To kind of, the more issues we get, the more detail we get, then the more likely it is for your request to be answered.
Ben just has a great note here, Ben Maris, who is our expert on the forged channels. So he said he already has a pull request for adding a conda recipe. So that means that very soon you will be able to Mamba install PyMC-Marketing, which is great. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, Vladimir asks, do you have an example notebook for budget optimization that you can share? The answer is yes. We have one, and this is something that Christian Luhmann has worked on with some students from Columbia University, and they've done excellent work to create such an example and figure this out, which is actually a bit harder of a problem than certainly I and we thought at first. But yeah, so in that you will see how to do fully Bayesian optimization, incorporating the whole posterior distribution, which is one of the areas where having the Bayesian approach and having posterior distributions makes a really big difference, because not only do you then can look at things and see like, oh, uncertainty is large or not, but you really get better answers and make better decisions if you take that into account. So the notebook will show that. That will be the first step, is just putting out that notebook that shows you. But the second step will then be to take that code, spearhead it in that notebook, and add it to the library as an optimization module. You're muted, Ben. You're still muted, Ben.
I'll start again. Okay, so the question was, is it possible to add utility functions for common plots, specifically response curves, like in lightweight MMM? Yes. So at the moment, if you kind of navigate to the documentation, if you just type in PyMC-Marketing.io, you'll be able to find example notebooks. And I believe we're in various stages of development. So there are many example plots shown there. Some of them are kind of manually created at this point, but I imagine that virtually all of them will transition to a very nice, neat API where you can just call for a particular type of plot that you want. So the answer is probably, if not very soon. But again, anything that you'd specifically like, do feel free to put in an issue, and we can address these like in descending order of popularity.
A question that I'm also going to pass to Niall. Any recommendations for channels like Billboard where we don't have varying ad spend over time?
Yeah, I just saw that question actually. Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. So my recommendation for that would be to use a panel data approach. So essentially one of the key things you can do, and it's quite advanced. So again, I think it's one of those which definitely put in a request and see what can be done. But if you look up a random effects estimator, you can essentially partially demean. I'm getting quite technical here, but if you have literally a standard spend over time in one region and you have that varying by region, you can use a econometric approach to actually understand what that impact is, even if it's just a solid number. So random effects estimator is the way how to do it. And yeah, that's definitely what I'd recommend.
Okay, so there's a really interesting question here. How would PyMC-Marketing handle clients' priors? For example, an expected range of ROIs for the media channels, or an expected % contribution from non-media drivers such as price, inflation, etc. So yeah, great question. So this is something that we have done in the bespoke modeling that we've done with clients. It's not yet in the MMM, but I believe we had a question earlier which touched upon, user specification of priors. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that in PyMC, there's this really useful function called find constrained prior, and that allows you to basically define upper and lower bounds where you expect, for example, 95% of the credibility of certain things like ROI or inflation, for example, to be, and that then spits out the specific details, the specific keyword arguments you need for certain prior distributions. So all of the hard work to enable such a thing has been done. And so I think it's basically a matter of time until we integrate that into the MMM. And as always, if that's placed into the GitHub issue tracker, then we'll see that and prioritize it.
Another questions. If we don't see strong yearly seasonality in the sales metric, do you still recommend including it in the model? What do you think, Niall?
Yeah, I've got enough context with that to to answer that question. Don't know. Pass. Not enough context in the question, I guess. I mean, unless there's more detail, like it.
And also I noticed that there's one person, well, or maybe it's several, but anonymous attendee is like asking a lot of really good questions. So please get in touch. You seem interested and have great ideas. So we'd love to get to know you more. Ben?
Yeah, so one of the questions is, can we easily calibrate the model with experimental results? also when experiment results change over time. Yeah, so I'm going to liberally interpret that as relating to the results of lift tests, for example. This is exactly the kind of stuff that we've done in the past with previous clients, where very often there can be, you know, reasonable levels of uncertainty in how effective each of the channels are. And so every now and again, you might engage in a lift test, which can be quite a costly endeavor to do, but it's really useful because you can get a more of a confident measure about how efficient certain channels are. And we have already integrated that into at least one client project. As I mentioned, the aspiration is to get PyMC-Marketing to always be approaching the state of the art. So fingers crossed.
I have another question for Niall. What is your recommendation on geogranularity for Bayesian models, i.e. using national versus DMA/province level data?
Yeah, this is a common one that comes up, and a lot of people like to push towards regional data, particularly because for sales data, it can be quite easy to obtain. But the way I kind of think back to it is looking at what your media data granularity is. So fundamentally, if your media data isn't anything lower than national, then don't try and complicate the model unnecessarily. You're just extending the cost in processing extra data and not obtaining any new information in the model. Some people like to think it adds information, but I'm under strong belief it doesn't. You're essentially just replicating national data over a regional sales, which could just be picking up noise. So that's my recommendation. Is depending on what the client's objective is, depends on what your media data level is at, kind of determines how you should kind of go that way.
Great. So I guess there are two related questions. One is, are there ways to auto-tune the model, like optimize the priors based on a goodness of fit KPI? Well, so currently there is no way to do that. It's a little bit odd to go that far, pushing your priors in terms of fitting them directly to the data, is what it sounds like to me. There's this other idea of prior elicitation, where you specify priors on, well, different ways of specifying priors by generating data and then saying which data you think you expect to see and which data you don't think to see, and then you can elicit priors that way. And that is, I think, a really reasonable way of doing that. Otherwise, I mean, auto-tuning for me would just be the fitting, and then you get the posterior of this. And there you want to, that's automatically optimizing a certain goodness of fit score. So that's what I would say.
I think just one interesting concept that I've come across is, and I think something Max did, it's something called the R2D2 prior. And it's actually approaching it in the converse. So the way I've used it in the past is when you've got hyper granular media data. So you've got a lot more channels or a lot more variables and observations. This is what this prior is designed to do, is essentially mitigate overfitting. So, yeah, we're talking of the scenario where you've got 30 observations and 300 variables. What you don't want to happen is your model to overfit the variables to overfit the data. What you can use with an R2D2 prior, which I believe is in PyMC experimental, is actually limit how much it overfits. And from that, you actually get a far better predicting model from actually very limited data. So I would actually look at that rather than trying to maximize what the fit is trying to do. It's kind of the converse way of doing it. And you can really get really hyper granular measure on channels with not a lot of data. So it's really fascinating.
That's a great answer. Then there's a question. There are many gaps in the current open source MMM solution, like ability to regularly calibrate with experiments, actionability of results by planning a granular level, proper handling of lower funnel media channels, inclusion of creative, reach and frequency, etc. with MMM results. Do you have any plans to solve any of these challenges? So yes, definitely we'd like to solve all of them. It's definitely a long list, so we might not have everything in there that soon, but I mean, yes, those are like problems that people have in marketing, and we'd like to have the best solution for all of them. So yes, absolutely. And if that's something you'd like to help us with, we'd love any contributions. But yeah, like those are all, I think, really good, essentially feature requests. It seems the current library sets parameters for media or control channels only. If we release certain media channels behave differently from other media channels, such as different types of ad stock decay, is there a solution to add second set of parameters to certain media channels? I don't think that's currently possible, but it sounds also reasonable. I don't know if someone else have a better answer.
Yeah, so I don't know if I 100% interpreting the question right, but I think we're talking about channel level priors, basically. So yeah, at the moment, no, but there's no, if I've interpreted the question correctly, there's no real reason why you can't be a bit more elaborate in how you set up your models, doing channel level priors.
Okay, and then let's just take a last question. For your experiments with time varying coefficients, what libraries does your team use? So these are currently hand coded in PyMC. We use the Gaussian process submodule that PyMC has to build them. And yeah, so these are not part of the open source library, but we want to add that capability to it. Yeah, so far that's only internal. Great. Okay. Well, we didn't unfortunately get through all questions, so we didn't get to yours, but thank you all so much for tuning in. This was great. We hope that PyMC-Marketing is going to be useful to you and that you check it out and let us know how you like it and submit any issues, love mail, hate mail. We take it all, and especially pull requests. So with that, thank you, everybody.